bombshell evidence previously unreleased in the Karmelo Anthony trial. The prosecution has disclosed some of this, and I have to tell you, it is really incredible. First, we'll start with the fact that the trial judge, John Roach, was removed from the case because of his TV interview. This is one of the arguments I said did have teeth for the defense's motion for a new trial. In his TV interview, Judge John Roach said that he believed the jury got it right. And the judge who heard this part of the motion decided that Judge Roach should be recused, so he tossed him from the case. And now we're getting into sort of the merits of the defense's motion. So Karmelo Anthony has a pretty much a brand new appellate team right now that wrote this motion for a new trial. One of the things they attacked is this supposed gentleman's agreement. A gentleman's agreement is what they called it, between the prosecution and the defense not to insert character evidence into the trial. And during the hearing, the assistant district attorney said that, let me just tell you what that evidence would have been. And it's pretty serious. One of the things the ADA said was Karmelo Anthony's girlfriend on the day of the murder told the assistant principal that she had just broken up with Karmelo and said that Karmelo was stalking her and that she was afraid of him. She reported that Karmelo was obsessed with guns, fights, and knives. She said that he had sent her a text saying that he was, quote, I'm low-key on the verge. He also had text messages where he was fantasizing about stabbing someone and licking the blood off of the blade. After this encounter with the girlfriend, the murder occurred hours after that. Also included in this evidence, the ADA talked about Anthony went to a program for juveniles struggling with anger. The ADA also said that there was an exchange for this gentleman's agreement. It wasn't just about not releasing evidence about Karmelo Anthony. There was also some evidence about Austin Metcalf that may not have been very flattering. The defense agreed not to bring up some racist graffiti, supposedly, that Austin Metcalf had created, and that he had a history of being aggressive. And this agreement was verbal, it was not written. So the defense argues that Anthony's rights were violated because he didn't get to testify. And ultimately, what the defense said is that when they were starting to talk about Karmelo Anthony testifying with the prosecution, and they talked about the fact that they had this agreement that the character evidence wouldn't come in, that the prosecution basically said, oh, that evidence is coming in if he gets on the stand because you guys have already opened the door. You guys talked already about how he likes chess. And they said that was a violation of the agreement because that's character evidence. And so the defense says that excuse me. And so the defense says that the prosecution kind of going back on this gentleman's agreement is the reason that Karmelo Anthony didn't take the stand, and that was a violation of his rights. I don't see this going anywhere because, number one, the evidence that could have come in about Karmelo Anthony was not going to do him any favors. And I think the corresponding evidence about Austin Metcalf is not damning enough to undo the damage that would have done to Karmelo's defense. The issue with the knives and the wanting to stab someone and the lick the blood off the knife and the girlfriend feeling like he was stalking her. I mean, this is not good stuff for him and would have only made it worse. And I think possibly would have impacted the sentence that he received. Not to mention, the threshold for a new trial is pretty high. So the defense basically has to prove that had some of this evidence come in, that the verdict would have been different. And it's pretty clear that the outcome would not have been different. It may have been worse if some of this evidence have come in, particularly on the sentencing side. But is it justice to keep evidence like this from the jury? Should the jury have heard all of this? Now, the prosecution and the defense agreed to do this together, but a judge didn't decide which evidence should be admitted and which evidence should be withheld in the situation. And it's probably better if the judge would have decided, okay, we'll admit this and not this. This is what the jury should hear. Here's what the jury shouldn't hear. But again, I don't think this would have benefited Karmelo, because the odds are that the text message probably would have been admitted because it would have been relevant to Karmelo Anthony's state of mind at the time of the encounter with Austin Metcalf. I'm not sure if Austin Metcalf's graffiti would have been admitted. That probably would have been deemed irrelevant, I think. So I don't think any of this would be enough, but I do think it's a good question about whether the jury should have heard some of this stuff, and whether this is truly justice for the jury to just hear sort of about the four corners of what happened under that tent. The other argument the defense makes is the fact that there was no audio or video recording of the trial allowed, and there was limited seating. Now, we do know that this was state court, but federal courts never allow recordings. And so we know that that in and of itself is not a violation of your rights. You don't have although you have the right to a public trial, that you have a right for the public to have access. That doesn't mean that the video and the audio must be available or there. Some states allow it, some states don't. In Texas, the judge is allowed to make the decision. And so we'll see what happens. I don't think this is going to go anywhere either. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I don't think this is going to be enough to get any sort of verdict overturned. But what is next? Well, this new judge is going to consider all these appeal arguments to determine whether Karmelo Anthony should get a new trial. I assume that if that motion is denied, then the defense will appeal, and it'll go all the way up, and that'll be the end of that. If for some reason, which I don't think it's going to happen, but if for some reason Karmelo gets a new trial, I don't think it's going to go well for him. I actually think he could end up with a much harsher sentence if some of this other evidence is admitted. Right now, he was sentenced to 30 some odd years, and he's able to get parole after about 17, which means he could get out of jail in his mid-30s. After hearing some of this other evidence about him kind of being ready for a fight or ready to stab someone, or, that's what some of this evidence kinds of implies, the jury may not be as merciful in their sentence this time. So I don't know. I don't know if these arguments are enough. I definitely don't think they're enough for a new trial, but I don't think they're doing Karmelo Anthony any favors. What do you guys think? We will keep watching. I'll let you know what goes on throughout the rest of this appeals process, which will be long.